Hello, this is John Canalopoulos, Clinical Professor of Ophthalmology at NYU Medical School in New York City, New York, and Medical Director here in Athens at the LaserVision Ambulatory Surgery Center. Today, it's March 5th. We're starting our cataract routine as promised. We're keeping you abreast. Again, a toric lens here, marking the axis of the toric lens, the 2.75 incision, 1mm paracentesis. Everything is played back times 8. I'm not as fast as it looks. And manual capsulorhexis, we've talked about this before. We've tried the femto, the zepto rather, and this is the most resilient to the maneuvers of the surgery. We're seeing here that this is, for US standards, a mature cataract. For our standards here in Greece, a beginning cataract. Patients come here at least 5 years to 10 years later to have cataract surgery, unfortunately, because there's not great surveillance on visual symptoms of night driving and quality of vision. So divide and conquer. We're doing the cortex here with my left hand through the paracentesis. A small piece of nucleus removed. Very critical part here, polishing the posterior capsule. Methylcellulose, always ID the lens, toric lens. The cartridge D, our go-to lens is the Acrosoft spheric toric. Coming in to remove the viscoelastic, I use copious viscode. This is a good case to see how tricky it is in this patient to get the trailing haptic in. So I had to go by manually and do that, and it's quite dangerous to leave that because then you have a lens placed part in the capsule, part in the sulcus, and these lenses are not large enough to do that. Plus, you will induce the tilt and lenticular astigmatism. Different patient, similar sort of axis. Again, our 2.75 incision, always at 135 degrees. And we've talked about this before. In my opinion, the key of the success of the postoperative target is to have an almost standard protocol of incision, measurements. This way you can really quantify every single aspect of the surgery and be relatively accurate. Again, a divide and conquer technique. Our goal, as we've talked about before, is plano or max to minus 0.2 spherical equivalent with half the rule, half diopter rather, with the rule astigmatism in all cases. So we'll put a toric lens even if a patient has slight against the rule astigmatism, because we want to convert them post-op to slight with the rule. The cataract here is out, and in the dominant eye. The non-dominant eye, we're aiming to from a minus half to minus 0.75, so a mild blended vision. This is not monovision, in order to attain better than 20/20 distance with this scenario, and invariably J3 near without correction, which is a fantastic result and really competitive to any EDOF result without any compromise in contrasensitivity. So we're seeing again lens in good position, hydrating the incisions. I like the fact that the capsulorhexis is touching on the lens, a little bit stronger in astigmatism here. This is a T5. In Europe, we have the range all the way from T2 to T9. In the US, T3 to T8. And we have reported in the past that we do an astonishing 95% toric lenses because of what I just mentioned before. This is a softer lens, as you will see here, by all criteria. Again, a divide and conquer technique here. I'm going to break to put more viscode. I know it's an expensive accessory and luxury, but it's very safe for the patient to go in and fish the rest of the nucleus with good formed anterior chamber. We're taking the part nucleus that was left behind, careful cortex removal with a bimanual technique. Again, we're seeing the lens here with 225 astigmatism on the lenticular level. Remember, as we said before, the post-op astigmatism of a pseudophakic eye will be that of the patient's cornea and not the astigmatism the patient was wearing all their lives. I went under the lens, over the lens, positioning the lens to the correct axis, hydrating the incision. You'll see in some cases I'll go back and forth. We're very strict on position of the lens. We're at 142 degrees here. Again, it seems like everybody's against the rule today. Different iris incisions. Again, always at 135. cystotome to initiate the capsulorhexis. You try to forceps hydrodissection. It may start to look boring, but in my opinion, this is the pearl of an experienced surgeon to use a standardized technique, because as I mentioned before, we saw the added visco, their key thing for safety. That's a trap for many surgeons, to go chasing a small piece of nucleus with a unformed chamber, a patient that's squeezing, and then you're through the capsule. Perfect result. The lens is missing. We can tell this is a hyperopic patient because the lens is at 24.5. So they will be very happy to have good distance and relatively good near because of the trick we're doing with the toricity. Again, half adapter goal with the rule on all patients. And hydrating the incisions, you'll see me going back and forth. I lost one of the marks. I'm not sure that the mark is correct, but for me, astigmatism is so important that I'll go back, remark, reposition the lens. I think all of this underlines our effort to achieve what I just mentioned, and God bless we're getting it. Again, a T4 lens here against the rule. I think it's the other eye of that same patient. You saw I'm marking my incision at 135 strictly and always non-negotiable. Standard capsulorhexis, hydrodissection, spinning the lens a little bit, divide and conquer. The maturity of the lens requires it. You'll see probably a case further down that the lens is quite soft, so I will split the lens in half and absorb the two halves, removing the cortex, coming in to take all the residual aspects, filling in with methylcellulose now. Here's our plus 24 lens, going in, placing the lens in the capsule bag. It's unfolding very nicely. I'm going in to perform the aspiration under the lens, hydrating the wound, and again, see how careful I am in always coming in with the best possible position according to our marks. And we've evaluated this postoperatively. This is a different case, but very similar technique. It's almost as if we're looking the same procedure over and over. The only thing that changes is the obviously IOL power, the color of the iris of each patient, and the density of the cataract. Here we're looking at a real cataract. I think this patient is in his 80s. He's kind of missed of a decade of good vision. And I'm always amazed how forgiving people are with their vision. And we know that's because cataract comes in slowly. And we as clinicians need to educate the public that they can definitely see better after their 60s, late 60s, and definitely in their 70s than they think they're seeing. That's why when we do the first eye, they always complain about the second eye. Divide and conquer here. We were under 80 joules, if I remember well, in this case. And this is a great aspect of today's phacoemulsification. We use the signature device. J&J was the first company, again at T4 at 10 degrees, folding the lens. The Acrosoft toric, a spheric, same routine under the lens to remove the residual viscoelastic, visco under the lens, and methylcellulose over. Very good removal of viscoelastic to avoid spikes of the IOP the next day. Hydrating incisions. Make sure the toricity of the lens is at par with what we marked pre-op. And again, next case, actually I think this is the 80-year-old patient. 135 incision, 275 paracentesis, 1 millimeter. Again, our curvilinear manual capsulorhexis. And as I always mention in my videos, we have Thomas Neuheim of Munich to thank of this technique. I still remember the day that as a eye surgery resident, starting to do my first cases, I saw that video coming in from Munich and I really dropped my jaw. Remember, back then we were doing can opener capsulorhexis, even in phaco. And this technique was meant to be invented and here to stay. So we have residual cortex here after removal of quite significant cataract. This was the case with the 80 joules energy. we think we put a little pebble in the story of current phaco with our nanosecond laser publication back in the late 90s, where we showed that you can remove a cataract with energies of 2 or 3 joules. And I think that really pushed the industry of phacoemulsification manufacturers to come in with a post-phaco power, which is the one that gives us the ability to have reduced phaco power drastically. I remember cases back in the late 90s that we used 300, 400 joules of energy. This is something of the past. And of course, that's why cornea transplantation is something of the past in pseudophakic patients. I was at the wave where the US was transitioning from extra cap to phaco, and it is not a surprise that during that era, in the early and mid 90s, we had a very large number of pseudophakic bullous keratopathy, because that included, as most things in medicine, the learning curve for all the ophthalmic surgeons to be able to do surgeries like the ones we're seeing here today, and the ones that we're seeing no drop in the field of cell density. We measure this routinely in all our patients. I get carried away here. The thing in our view is another cataract procedure, divide and conquer again. See, I'm filling in again with viscoelastic before I took out the little piece of nucleus. Is a big trap to feel overconfident and go in with your phaco tip and nick the posterior capsule. That's why I fill in with viscoelastic. Make sure I have a good procedure. I noted there to remember, and I need to share with you in the second eye, that this patient, although myopic, axial length over 25 millimeters, she had PRK from 5 diopters of myopia in 2005. So we're almost 20 years later. She has a very shallow chamber, which made the procedure quite challenging. We had to raise the bottle both in the phaco and the IA stage, and thank two of the viscoelastic that we used, Viscoat and methylcellulose. It was a non-issue. Here, the second eye, and I think this is the also last one of our series today, consecutive cases from our surgical day. Continuous curvilinear capsulorhexis. We're on the right eye. And again, this is a shallow chamber, which is kind of an oxymoron on the long eye, on the 25 millimeter eye. So you need to have all these data, and the team has to be in sync in order to be able to make this procedure look as easy as it looks. The truth is that there's almost 2 hours per case in preoperative measurements, from axial length to IO calculation to sine fluid imaging with the pentacam of total corneal power, to anterior chamber depth with the IO Master 700. All of the above details very important to make this look as simple and easy as it looks. So our toric lens, we're on the right eye on this post LVC patient. We're of course using the ACRS formula. On this particular case, we went with our own formula because we felt it was more correct. It had a deviation of almost 1 diopter. All done here. Thanks for your attention. Hope to see you again soon. And thanks for watching this with me.